Mr. Jaitley, thank you very much for joining me on Frankly Speaking. One of the opportunities we've got after you became finance minister, I was told that you have the busiest calendar, busiest diary in the Union Cabinet.
No, I'm fairly relaxed most of the time. My responsibilities include the Rajya Sabha because I'm the leader of the House. So my time gets divided not between my ministries but also between Parliament and the ministries. And then, of course, traveling in some functions.
And I hope you are going to be very frank with me today, so that we know, your frank perspective on many of these issues.
If I'm not frank, I know you'll grill me to it.
I think I'll have to, Mr. Jaitley. Mr. Jaitley, my first question to you is, and therefore please don't mind, I'll be as direct with you as possible. There is a sense that you got a very historic mandate. You got 282 seats. But the picture today, 11 months after you came into power, is not as rosy as one would have expected. Instead, one gets the sense that in a way the government is constantly embattled, especially over the last few months. Do you agree with my assessment, which is also shared by a lot of people?
I don't agree with that at all. For the reason, if you understand the perspective of that mandate, what was the mandate all about? The first part of the mandate was that you must provide decisive leadership to the country. The last government did not. The Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, certainly has provided decisive leadership. On the contrary, the criticism is, why did you decide this? You need not have decided this, because it's a problematic area. The second issue was that India was in a slowdown phase, economically. We had to get the country out of that phase. Today, globally, where the world faces a global economic challenge and a slowdown, India is being regarded as one of the brighter spots. We can do much better. And over the next few months and years, I have no doubt that we are going to increase the pace. The third, are you clear about your roadmap? We certainly are. Fourthly, in terms of decision makings, are you scared of taking difficult decisions? We've demonstrated when we passed 4 ordinances, how will you get them cleared? 3 have been cleared. I have not the least doubt that the 4th will also be cleared. And let me give you the last, something which you in particular are on the lookout every evening. Has in the last 11 months, anybody, including you, even dare suggest that there is an element of non-accountability or something where the government is lacking in ethics? It's a clean government. It's a scam-free government. We are trying to reform systems, learning from our predecessors. Spectrum, please auction it. Coal, please auction it. Mines, please auction it. We are in fact eliminating discretions, which is leading to a far more transparent and cleaner politics and keeping ourselves away from those kind of unsavory controversies. What are the challenges we face because of which you...
Because you're only looking at the positives. You highlighted all the positives.
I'll also give you the challenges that we face.
Not talking of the politically, how embattled you are.
The challenges that we face is that we have people who want to obstruct the economic growth program in this country. And therefore, at every stage, rather than speak on the merits of the issue, you get into some collateral debate, you are pro so-and-so, and get into those issues. We also have a challenge, and let me concede before you ask me that obvious question, that some of our own friends, however well-meaning they would be, tend to make statements, and we live in a world of 24/7 media, and therefore the focus, instead of the good performance of the government, then shifts into those controversial issues. That's the challenges we face, and I'm quite conscious of that.
Mr. Jaitley, I find from your fairly well articulated opening remarks that you basically believe that the problem is only one of perception, that in reality there is nothing wrong, and therefore I would like to take up issue by issue with you so that we can come to a conclusion on whether the problem is only perception or the reality. So first, of course, Mr. Jaitley, you presented, do you agree with the shift in national mood? That when you were elected, before the election, there was a sense of hope, excitement, bullishness, and now there's a sense of anxiety that is building up about the pace of
I would differ with you. The initial months are always those of enthusiasm. You take decisions fast. After you do that, then there comes a phase where the slog period of the government begins. You don't get instant results. You take steps, it takes months and months together for them to translate into ground realities and translate into figures of improvement. Our government now has entered into the slog period. You have to take a large number of decisions, the actual implementation of those decisions and the effect of those decisions will be felt in the course to come. That is the phase where we are in.
Have you become very rigid on the land bill, Mr. Jaitley? I mean, at the end of the day, it's become an all or nothing situation. It's almost as if today you're willing to pit your majority of 282,
I think
the goodwill which you have vis-a-vis this one bill.
I think we must first answer the basic question. Are amendments required to the 2013 law or not? Do we get into a level of debate without understanding the issue?
How has the situation changed since 2013? How does it change in one
I'll tell you how the situation changed. 2013 was election eve. So the government at that time probably thought, and I have this from the highest in the government at that time, that land bill is a provision that will make you win an election. It didn't get you a single vote.
Why did you back it?
You see, we had cautioned them. In fact, it was considerably changed even in the standing committee. I can say for myself, I was in touch with people in the government who mattered at that time, that there are provisions which are going to be impractical. Post 2013, when the new government takes over, we convene a meeting of all state governments, which includes the UPA Congress state governments. Every state government without an exception says, these provisions hinder India's economic growth. I'm afraid that those who say that this is pro-corporate, I challenge them, they have not read the bill. The 2015 amendment is an amendment which is in the larger interest of rural India. It's in the larger interest of farming community. And I'll make good that argument. In the 2013 law, they had 13 exceptions in Schedule 4. That these are bills to which this complicated procedure won't apply. Compensation remains 4 times. It remains so. That 13 has now become 18 because 5 more have been added. Which are the 5 more added? The 2013 law prevents every irrigation program in this country. It prevents rural roads. It prevents rural electrification. The 2015 law permits that. And you have some person without reading it says it's pro-corporate.
Did you not read it in 2013?
I'll tell you.
Mr. Jaitley, you have been one of the most prominent. Allow me to intervene at this stage. Mr. Jaitley, because I am aware of the way in which you are taking this argument. You are now going to break it up to the provisions of the bill and you're going to argue why this bill is better than that bill and it's an improvement. Sorry, but I'm trying to predict the line of your argument. But Mr. Jaitley, my question is not on those specifics right now. My question is an issue of intent. In 2013, would you concede, if I were to ask you, that before the election, the BJP did not follow logic but followed a certain political understanding that if you go against the bill being introduced then, it would not be politically saleable. Allow me to complete one more sentence. In that sense, you were more careful about offending the Kisan, the farmer in 2013. You are a little bit more brash about it now.
No. In 2013, if you look up the parliamentary debate, particularly in the Rajya Sabha, after the bill has been passed by the Lok Sabha, the day it came up in the Rajya Sabha, I raised this issue with the concerned minister. The 2013 bill is completely going to prevent irrigation programs in this country, and that is anti-farmer. The minister got up on the floor of the house and said, I am bringing 3 amendments so that irrigation projects can go on. My mistake was I trusted him with those 3 amendments. When I look at the bill now as he passed it in the house, it's inconsistent with the assurance.
Are you saying you were cheated in 2013?
Well, I am giving the facts. I am not given to using harsh phrases. I raised the issue of irrigation projects. In 2013 in the Rajya Sabha, the Rajya Sabha was told that it's being amended and being taken back to the Lok Sabha, and irrigation still was not kept out. Irrigation projects were still prevented. Now, if in 2015, state after state realize it, including UPA states, and say we want an amendment to this bill, please don't stop irrigation projects. You have some person without reading this bill comes up and says irrigation is pro-corporate, rural roads are pro-corporate.
Am I to understand that Arun Jaitley, leader of the opposition, one of the finest lawyers in this country, forgot to read the details of the bill, Mr. Jaitley? How many people watching, frankly speaking, will believe that line?
Well, you don't have to get into this argument of perception. Please read the Parliament debate of 2013. And please read the assurance of the minister that I am bringing in the irrigation projects into the bill, or I am keeping them out of the bill. There is a specific assurance. In fact, if you pick up the debate on another day, maybe I can, you can confront me again. I'll have the debate in front of you. The 2013 debate clearly says irrigation projects पे कोई adverse असर नहीं पड़ेगा. And finally, you find irrigation projects as a whole are being stopped.
But Mr. Jaitley, can I rebut you on that point? Now let's take another point. By the way, you haven't answered my earlier question on whether, and I want you to answer that. But after this one, Rajnath Singh, speaking of arable land, the present Union Home Minister, your colleague in the cabinet. Now, Mr. Jaitley, no matter what you say that about your rationale to water down the consent clause, I have from Parliament at that point of time, Rajnath Singh, who spoke very strongly in favor of a watertight consent clause. This is around August 2013 when the matter came up for legislation in Parliament. He said, and I quote, I'm quoting in Hindi and I'll try to do my best translation. He says, कृषि योग की भूमि जब तक किसान सहमति ना दे तब तक उसका अधिकरण नहीं होना चाहिए और there will be a food security crisis. Now, Mr. Jaitley, the fact is, now you've done a 180-degree flip on the consent clause that was mandated in the UPA bill.
Arnab, please, I would at least request you, please sit with me and read the bill.
Has Rajnath Singh said this?
The whole concept in the Land Acquisition Act is, ordinarily consent will be taken, but there are exceptions to the consent.
Yes.
In the 2013 law also, there were 13 exceptions to the consent. Today that 13 is being made into 18. It is being made into 18 because India needs, as I said, irrigation. India needs housing for poor. India needs industrial corridors in rural areas, because unless you have industrial corridors in rural areas, there is going to be no job generation in the rural areas. And you will have farmers only dependent on agriculture who won't be able to survive.
I'll come to that economic argument, but Mr. Jaitley, how exactly are you going to ensure that the farmer who you say you are indirectly or directly doing all this for is safeguarded from industrialists who misuse a particular plot of land for a purpose other than what it was acquired for?
But let me tell you, you are mistaken. It is not industrialists who are going to pay 4 times the amount. Industrialists will buy land at the market price and then ask for a land user. If you need provisions of industrial corridors in rural areas, you need it for generating employment in the rural areas.
No, you are coming to the broad economic argument. My point is,
but the economic argument is a real argument. We live in a world which is dictated by economics.
Yeah, but Mr. Jaitley, today I agree with you. I'm not denying that point. As far as I know, the ordinance does not clearly define the 5 categories of land that are exempt from consent, which means that tomorrow, Mr. Jaitley, hypothetically,
it specifically defines.
Can I? Hypothetically, tomorrow a corporate house can say I'm doing rural infrastructure, but actually misuse the land for personal
Not in the least.
It has happened before.
I'll tell you.
If it has happened
let me just tell you. The 5 categories are specifically defined. Category 1, defense and security of India. Do we need land for our nuclear program or not? The 2013 doesn't give it. 2015 gives it. Second, rural infrastructure. Why should industrialists be interested in building rural infrastructure? He is not interested in rural roads and rural electrification. Category 3, housing for poor. The maximum definition of affordable housing for poor is 800 square feet. Yeah. These are not houses for big builders. These are houses which, when migration of rural population to urban areas takes place, that people will require. Infrastructure in those rural areas. You need rural roads, you need rural electrification, you will need broad roads in the rural areas. Or do we not need those rural areas? And some imaginary argument is picked up.
Not imaginary.
No, it is imaginary because people who have not read the bill say it is meant for corporates.
Okay, can I give
now, I am just asking you, is security of India, rural infrastructure, housing for poor, are these for corporates, or are these for the poor farmer? Or is the farmer going to live in that village hut for the rest of his life?
No, that's understood, Mr. Jaitley, and I understand what you're saying in the whole business of trickle-down economics. I'll give you a specific counter, and I want you to respond. Your party leaders, I don't know if it's Ravi Shankar Prasad or Chandan Mitra, but either one of them, from my reading of the parliamentary debates, argued giving the case of NH3. And in the case of NH3, the specific point they made was that you took the farmer's land, then there was excess land. What was the excess land used for? It was used for malls, it was used for apartments, it was used for cinema halls.
That's
So
improper. It should not be done. That's a right illustration
So
to be
does it
given.
not prove that I'm right, that land is often misused?
Therefore, because once it has been misused, you should not have acquisition at all. Because in one police station, Indian Penal Code is misused. So you repeal the Indian Penal
But
Code.
isn't the apprehension justified then?
No, but does India need to live perpetually in poverty? That's the larger question. Now, yesterday I heard a statement 2 days ago from one of the Congress leaders. 60 or 67% of people are in agriculture. Yes. But believe me, more than half of them are landless laborers. Now, those landless laborers have no land to lose. But those landless laborers also need jobs, for which you need industrial corridors in rural areas. You need job generation in rural areas. They just forget all that landless laborer. How is he going to grow? Dr. Ambedkar used to say that the best protection for Dalits in this country and the landless is industrialize the rural areas. Yeah. And you are wanting to prevent the industrialization of rural areas.
Okay, here's a proposition to you. Mr. Arun Jaitley's quote on 15%, I mean, this is around February 26, 2015, you said, and this has been quoted repeatedly, what you said, that GDP is 15%, share of population is 60%. So 60% of India's population is contributing 15% of the GDP. Mr. Jaitley, are you therefore trying to say, or is your government trying to say, let me put it this way, that because the farmer is not contributing enough, the farmer therefore becomes dispensable? Because this is exactly how this is being seen.
Not in the least.
The argument being made is this government is very patronizing towards the farmer and feels the farmer is not essential.
No, not
to
in the
India's
least. Not in the least, Arunab. Because 15% income comes from 60% people. So for this 60, you have to take 10, 20 or 25% out of that into other forms of employment. When you have an agrarian crisis today in the country because farming is no longer becoming lucrative, everybody in the family is not there. He needs more jobs. And therefore, creation of infrastructure in rural areas, creation of industrial job opportunities in rural areas is what you have to provide to those people. Now, what the Congress party and the UPA and the other opponents of this bill are doing is, they are preventing the growth and development of rural areas, both by way of infrastructure and by way of industrialization. You need some of those 60% to come out in other sources. It's happened all over the world. Why should it not happen in India?
Is your worldview elitist? Because if the theory of trickle-down economics is to be applied, Mr. Jaitley, allow me to complete. You will understand this perfectly well. The principle of trickle-down economics, Mr. Jaitley, is that economic benefits provided to businessmen and upper income levels or money appropriated by the government via taxation will eventually help the poorer men.
That's not my theory at all.
That is the generic understanding.
No, that is not my theory at all. You will have some trickle-down, but you need a state with larger resources so that it can simultaneously service the poor with poverty alleviation schemes. The Indian model is not a trickle-down model alone. Along with the factum of trickle-down or pull-up, you can use either of the two phrases, you also need to pump a lot of resources through poverty alleviation schemes, through social security schemes, into the weaker sections of society. That's the Indian model that we are subscribing
Mr. Jaitley, as one of the most articulate members of the BJP, what you've effectively done is that you agree with what I'm saying, you're putting it in your own way. The argument is essentially the same.
I am only taking your words to their logical conclusion.
No, but you are responding to me because I use the word elitist. But the point is that resources will inevitably trickle down to all sections of society. Are we agreed on that?
You see, resources will trickle down, but trickle down alone can't solve the problem. And therefore, you need an enriched government with larger revenue so that it can service the poor.
Sympathetic and understanding towards the farmers, for sure.
Obviously.
Then why does Mr. Gadkari say, and this has been the quote which even Rahul Gandhi quoted, we will discuss Rahul Gandhi later. He said, don't rely on God and government. Is this, and I'll read the whole quote. He says, don't rely on God and government. Take the initiative on your own to ameliorate your lot. you are the architect of your lives, etc. Sounds like a moral science lesson. And then he says, you yourself can change your own line provided you adopt new technology based on innovative entrepreneurship.
It's perfectly correct.
No, it's a Marie Antoinette kind of
No,
comment.
I'm sorry. Shouldn't Indian farmers go in for diversification? Shouldn't Indian farmers go in for modern modes of irrigation and government support those modes of irrigation? Supposing farmers adopt technology, to say that, how is it an elitist concept?
Okay, can I explain?
Do you want Indian farmers to live in the 18th century?
How can a farmer who cannot sustain himself in a country where 12 to 13,000
The state will support him. The central government and the state governments will support him. I'll tell you why.
Then why are 13,000 farmers committing
I'll tell
suicide
you the
every year
reason.
for the last few years?
I'll tell you the reason. To each people in those areas, besides your normal social security schemes, we need, and that's one of the roadmaps which I have clearly ahead of me, you need to invest now heavily into irrigation projects.
That's long term, sir.
No, that's long term, but you have to have a long term solution. You can't have a patchwork solution that supposing there is a hailstorm and you have people dying. You can't have one crop going wrong and people committing suicide. Therefore, you have to go to the root of the problem. As far as the immediate problem is concerned, you have to be liberal in distributing relief. And in terms of distributing relief, the first thing that we have done is when we face this crisis, we have increased by 50% whatever was the aid given to them during the UPA period. In 1 year,
clearly it's not enough. Clearly it's not
I
enough.
concede it is not enough. I have not the least doubt it is not enough. I would personally prefer to even give more, and I can assure everybody through your channel that this 50% increase over what UPA was giving is the first step, and many more steps are going to be followed.
But Mr. Jaitley, essentially what are you now going to do? You have a situation where you can't live by ordinance on this bill. Will you call? December 31st last year, I think the president gave assent to your land ordinance. Now majority is totally against you in the Rajya Sabha, Mr. Jaitley. You concede, where the ordinance will lapse. You decide to prorogue the Rajya Sabha on March 28th, and you re-promulgate the ordinance for a second time.
There are only two questions.
What are you going to do?
There are only two
How long will you
There are only two questions which arise. The first question is, does Indian farmer and rural India live perpetually in poverty as per the 2013 law? Or do we create an infrastructure, industrialization of those areas or not? That's the first question. I am convinced we have to change it. If we have to change it, you need to have a change in the law. The change in the law is very simple, that you can pass it in the Lok Sabha, which we can. You probably will face obstructions in the Rajya Sabha, probably we will. And then there is a constitutional mechanism. We will try and adopt any good suggestion in the Rajya Sabha if it comes. But if it doesn't come, then whatever is the procedure prescribed in the constitution will follow.
Which is what?
The procedure prescribed is then you go for a joint session.
It's open to you?
I hope we don't have to go to that extent.
If you're looking at it?
I hope, but that is the constitutional provision.
Well, there is a clear, by the way, Mr. Jaitley, this is the either or kind of situation you're presenting. Your argument essentially, if I were to counter that.
If I pass it in the Rajya Sabha, I don't have to go to the joint session.
You can't pass it in the Rajya Sabha.
If I can't pass it, then let the constitutional process operate itself. Then you will have only two things. Either it's passed by a joint session or it's rejected by a joint session. Or I withdraw it after the Rajya Sabha.
So you are the only two options. So you're very open to a joint sitting to push this through.
I am open to any good suggestion to improve the bill, and therefore I will try and pass it in the Rajya Sabha.
But you are not making any changes to these basic arguments which are being made
because my friends in the opposition are not giving any constructive suggestions. They are talking without having read the bill, most of them.
It appears to me you've made up your mind for a joint sitting.
Well, you are entitled to your own conclusion.
But it's an option you're looking at.
The option is provided in the constitution. This is not the first joint session. This won't be the last joint session.
What if aren't you worried about perception? So I go back to the issue of perception then, that the government here, which is now, and I go to the moot issue, you're constantly being called pro-corporate, pro-industry, pro-rich. There are farmer suicide. How will you address the issue of perception, Mr. Jaitley? Just 10 seconds more. At a time when farmers are committing suicide, we've had a very...
I think you answered the question.
No, I haven't, sir. I haven't. I'm only placing the question in a broader context for you.
As of today, the 2013 law holds the field. 2015 has hardly not an inch has been acquired under that. In your present agrarian situation is what you have just now described. This is the status quo.
Nobody's buying that argument.
Well, there's a very large constituency which is buying it. If you buy it, many others will buy it. Therefore, there is a large status quo which is responsible for this situation. The land acquisition bill is not responsible for this situation. It's the status quo as of today. Do we change the status quo or do we not change the status
But you're creating an artificial divide, Mr. Jaitley, between the land acquisition bill and the problems of farmers. 1 second. If a simple argument being put to you, not
Well, let's
economic,
be very
is-
clear.
So 10 seconds. That a farmer is today vulnerable after what has happened to the crops, large parts of north and western India. At a moment of vulnerability, your government should not make the farmer more vulnerable.
Farmer is not being made vulnerable. You are not going to have large tracts being acquired under this. Whatever is essential for rural
How do
infrastructure.
you know? Land
Well-
is acquired and misused and
Well,
not.
I'll give you an answer. Read section 10 capital A of this act. It clearly says it is for the appropriate government, which is a state government, to notify these 5 cases or not. If some parties, the UPA or the Trinamool Congress doesn't want it, let them not notify it. So it won't be acquired under that act. But if another state, how can today West Bengal or Bihar say that Gujarat and Maharashtra should not acquire land under this provision? Bihar and West Bengal can speak for themselves. This law has a flexibility that it leaves it to the state to notify any or none of the 5 provisions. They can simply say we won't do it in our states. But can West Bengal or Bihar or Kerala for that matter get up and say, well, Tamil Nadu should not do it, Andhra Pradesh should not do it? Where does Andhra Pradesh build its capital from then? You have a new state without a capital.
So if in this budget session,
Today, Arnab, capitals won't be built in the air. Airports won't be built in the air. Seaports won't be built in the sea. You'll need land for all this. And if you make availability of land impossible, you are going to render India into a perpetual state of poverty, and the present status quo will continue.
last question on this. How long, before I move on, how long are you willing to give yourself time before a joint sitting of parliament?
Well,
this session and after that, or
I
are you
can
going to
only
wait
tell
in
you,
perpetuity?
in the calendar of politics, there is no last day. And therefore, we never fix it in terms of time. We'll persuade our friends in the opposition till the very last moment to see reason.
Which is that? Last moment isn't defined in calendar terms, sir?
Well, in politics, there is an element of flexibility. Today, he's on a rent-a-cause trip.
Rent a cause.
But that's what he's doing. He looks up for an issue every morning and wants to give a bite of that.
You're being
Fair enough.
patronizing towards Rahul Gandhi when you say rent a cause.